John D. Rockefeller's empire continued to grow, but the man himself remained a quiet, internalized observer, a man whose thoughts were more strategic than social, more operational than emotional. He had learned the art of patience in his childhood, had honed the skill of calm observation in his adolescence, and had applied it ruthlessly in the early stages of his business. Now, in the mature years of Standard Oil, that calmness became a weapon. He did not need to speak loudly or act aggressively. The world moved according to the rules he had imposed through sheer precision, foresight, and discipline. He had transformed the unpredictable oil industry into an organism that obeyed his logic. While others sought wealth for status, he sought wealth as a form of protection. His childhood had instilled in him a deep fear of instability, and money became the physical manifestation of control. Every dollar, every barrel refined, every shipment arranged, every competitor acquired was a brick in the fortress he built around himself. For Rockefeller, wealth was not vanity, it was armor. Every new refinery, pipeline, or railroad agreement strengthened that armor, reducing the risk of exposure to the chaos that had marked his early life. And he approached these moves with a precision that made others seem reckless by comparison. He understood that emotional decision-making was the enemy. Most businessmen in his era were guided by hope, fear, or pride, and they failed repeatedly because of it. Rockefeller, by contrast, treated business like mathematics. If a strategy produced reliable results, he pursued it relentlessly. If it introduced unnecessary risk, he discarded it. He rarely responded to criticism, attacks, or rumors. Competitors called him ruthless. Journalists called him unfeeling. But in truth, he was simply operating according to a principle he had discovered as a boy. Fear and chaos must not govern decisions. Every move he made was calculated, deliberate, and above all, consistent. His psychological approach to competition was as methodical as his approach to logistics. He acquired smaller refineries, not through intimidation or spectacle, but through calculated negotiation. He offered fair prices backed by steady growth and consistent operational practices, appealing to the rational self-interest of owners who understood the risks of remaining independent in a volatile market. Those who resisted eventually succumbed to the undeniable logic of his offers, often returning after watching the inefficiency of their own operations erode their fortunes. Rockefeller never forced anyone to act. He created circumstances in which the only rational choice was to join him. Control of transportation was central to his strategy. He negotiated rebates with railroads not because he desired dominance for its own sake, but because predictable shipping costs allowed him to plan production efficiently. Competitors who lacked these arrangements were forced into uncertainty. While others saw shipping as a secondary consideration, Rockefeller recognized that controlling the flow of oil was as vital as controlling its refinement. By securing the most favorable rates and prioritizing his own shipments, he effectively limited the ability of competitors to operate profitably. Here again, calmness and foresight created power where emotion had only chaos. He was methodical about public perception as well. He did not flaunt wealth, and he avoided ostentation. He wore modest clothing, practiced daily routines, and limited personal indulgences. To outsiders, his calm demeanor and conservative lifestyle were almost monastic. To Rockefeller, they were protective measures. Displaying wealth or emotion could invite scrutiny, exploitation, or instability. He understood the value of remaining understated, letting the world operate around him without revealing his inner mechanisms. By concealing his full intentions, he amplified the psychological impact of his strategic moves. Internally, Rockefeller maintained a rigorous mental discipline. He spent hours each day reviewing accounts, monitoring shipments, and evaluating operations. He scrutinized every detail, knowing that small inefficiencies multiplied into significant vulnerabilities. His discipline extended to himself and personal habits. He abstained from alcohol, adhered to strict schedules, and maintained a frugal lifestyle. He believed that self-restraint in personal matters reinforced clarity and control in business. Every practice, every routine, every small choice contributed to the broader architecture of power he was constructing. Even as Standard Oil grew, Rockefeller avoided overextension. He prioritized stability over rapid expansion, understanding that growth without control produced vulnerability. This restraint was unusual among his contemporaries, who often equated ambition with speed and visibility. Rockefeller equated ambition with precision and predictability. For him, the accumulation of power was a process, not a spectacle. The incremental advantages gained through careful calculation produced long-term dominance far more reliably than impulsive decisions or public displays of strength. He also cultivated a deep understanding of human behavior. He could read motivations, anticipate reactions, and exploit predictable tendencies. He understood that fear and hope were powerful drivers, but that rational clarity often prevailed when presented subtly. Negotiations with competitors, investors, and railroad executives were won not through force, but through the perception of inevitability. By appearing calm, measured, and unshakable, Rockefeller induced others to make errors while he maintained consistency. He leveraged psychology as effectively as he leveraged resources, creating an invisible yet unassailable advantage. By the 1880s, Standard Oil controlled the vast majority of oil refining in the United States. Rockefeller's methods had not relied on public intimidation or dramatic confrontation. They relied on quiet mastery. He consolidated smaller operations, optimized processes, and systematically eliminated inefficiency. He implemented rigorous accounting practices, demanded absolute performance from managers, and built infrastructure that supported long-term stability. Even in times of market fluctuation, his operations continued with minimal disruption. Where competitors faltered, he thrived. Where others panicked, he adapted. Philanthropy also became a strategic dimension of his psychology. Rockefeller gave away substantial portions of his wealth to educational, religious, and scientific causes. While many assumed this generosity was motivated purely by morality, it also served a deeper psychological function. It reinforced his control over his public image, shaped institutions in alignment with his values, and extended his influence into social and cultural spheres. By creating structures that reflected his principles, he expanded his legacy beyond mere financial accumulation. His giving was an extension of the same discipline, foresight, and calculation that guided his business decisions. Throughout these years, Rockefeller remained internally vigilant. He never allowed complacency to settle. Each acquisition, pipeline, and corporate consolidation was executed with meticulous attention. His calmness was maintained not by detachment from reality, but by mastery over it. Every threat was analyzed, every competitor studied, every outcome projected. His ability to foresee potential crises, combined with his relentless pursuit of efficiency, created a psychological buffer that insulated him from the chaos that destroyed so many others. The psychology that had begun in childhood, watching his father disappear, noting his mother's discipline, recording pennies in a ledger, studying numbers with obsessive focus, had matured into a strategy capable of shaping an entire industry. Rockefeller's mind operated like a finely tuned instrument, capable of calculating, anticipating, and executing with precision that few could match. His wealth was immense, yes, but it was not the point. The point was security, predictability, and the application of rational order to human and material systems alike. As his dominance grew, Rockefeller's reputation became almost mythical. He was admired, feared, misunderstood, and vilified in turn. Critics labeled him a monopolist and a manipulator, yet his operations were fundamentally grounded in logic, discipline, and consistency. He did not pursue power for its own sake. He pursued it as a means to enforce stability in a world prone to chaos. His enemies perceived cruelty. He perceived necessary order. His calmness was misinterpreted as coldness, but it was the product of a mind trained to remain steady while the world fluctuated around it. By the mid-1880s, Standard Oil had secured control over refining, distribution, and transportation of oil. Rockefeller had mastered not only the operational mechanics of the industry, but the psychological mechanics as well. He understood his competitors better than they understood themselves. He leveraged their impulses, fears, and miscalculations with quiet precision. He created systems that multiplied his influence while minimizing exposure to risk. And all of this stemmed not from arrogance, aggression, or luck, but from the internal architecture of discipline, observation, and calculated calm that had been formed in a childhood torn between chaos and order. Even in the face of public scrutiny and legal challenges, Rockefeller's approach remained the same. He did not react emotionally. He did not exaggerate or defend unnecessarily. He relied on the strength of his organization, the efficiency of his operations, and the inevitability of his strategy. To the world, it appeared as though he was untouchable, almost inhuman in his consistency. Internally, it was the culmination of decades of deliberate self-discipline, relentless observation, and the translation of fear into control. This phase of Rockefeller's life demonstrates the intersection of psychology and empire building. He did not conquer by force of personality or charisma. He conquered through a combination of rational calculation, emotional restraint, operational mastery, and the strategic application of influence. Wealth was a tool, not an end. Control was the goal. Stability was the method. And his childhood experiences, fear, observation, discipline, and suspicion, were the unseen architects of this unprecedented success. By understanding this, one can see how Rockefeller's riches were the product of mind as much as market. The boy who recorded pennies became the man who controlled billions, not by chance, not by luck, not by brute aggression, but through a lifelong cultivation of clarity, calm, and the ability to shape reality according to rational principles. The empire was an external manifestation of internal order, a physical reflection of a psychological architecture perfected over decades. In this period, Rockefeller's legacy began to take shape. Standard Oil was more than a company. It was a reflection of a mind capable of translating discipline into dominance, observation into insight, and caution into inevitability. By the time critics, competitors, and the public began to notice the magnitude of his power, Rockefeller had long mastered the internal systems that sustained it. His success was psychological first, financial second, and historical third. The empire followed naturally from the man, rather than the man from the empire.